It's Tuesday, February 6th, 2024, and welcome to the Well Played Podcast, home of everything you want to know and nothing that you need to. I am your host, Warren Curtis. This week we are talking about Nintendo Switch 2, the State of Play, and Halo Infinite PS5 Edition. But first, let's talk about what it is we do here. We talk about games and news, leaks and rumors, and give our opinions on why these things matter. We will talk about gaming as an adult and as parents, and we will also talk about the games we are playing. You can find more from us on YouTube. The link is in the description, and on Twitter by following at Amarren Studios. That is AMARREN STUDIOS. We are available as an audio show on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you want to catch your pods. Be sure to like us, rate us, ring that bell, because all of that helps everyone else find this show. And we want those comments. We want your feedback. So let's hear it. Just to remind everyone that you can also find more from us at Well Played Podcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. There's more news and op-eds coming in there on the daily or semi-daily anyways. With all that said, let's get into it. Right off the hop, I have some terrible news. Horrible news, in fact. It's over, you see. It's all over. A tragedy has befallen my most favorite electronic box, and it has me shook to my core. Xbox could be going multi-platform. Yeah, I know. It's hard to take. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've talked about this before a little bit, but the discourse on the internet has kind of gone nuts. And all the way from things like, oh, so-and-so is ditched, like Tim Dog ditched Xbox on social media. Okay, right? You got a bunch of like grown-ass 40-year-old men trading in their Xboxes at GameStop for $16 or whatever it is, because of rumors, things that aren't even confirmed to be happening. So, let's talk about this a little bit, and because this is such a big thing, we're going to spend some time on this, because there is some valid things here, but I also want to point out kind of where the truth is in the middle of all this, or at least where I believe the truth is in the middle of all this. First and foremost, let's kind of talk about what has happened over the course of the last few months. Going back into last year, I have reported on this, that games like, we already have multi-plat games from Microsoft in terms of, you think of like Minecraft, for example, and even Fallout 76 and ESO. Those are technically multi-plat. And now when you're looking at the whole ABK acquisition as a whole, that is multi-plat. There's a lot of things happening there that exist solely on, outside of the Xbox space, with Call of Duty and things that don't even show up on Xbox, like World of Warcraft and stuff like that. It's PC only, and anything that King makes basically is all going straight to mobile, right? So you have this huge bubble of publishers, or of developers working for Xbox as a publisher that are bypassing the exclusive game market. And then you have your big tentpole games that are vital and important to the brand at Xbox, and those right off the hop, what they are. They're Halo, they're Gears of War, Starfield falls into that category, Hellblade 2 falls into that category. There's quite a bit of those, and Microsoft has spent considerable amounts of money, $70 billion on Activision alone, to bolster their first party development studios. They bought Bethesda. They bought, and not just Bethesda, but ZeniMax as a whole. They've bought Obsidian. They've bought all these studios recently, and over the last few years, to bolster their first party studio capability. And there's games within that exist outside of the Xbox branding. Back when I was first talking about this, we were talking about like Minecraft is multi-platform. And that's kind of the thing that we would be expecting out of this. The rumors speculated specifically around games like Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment, and more recently Sea of Thieves got thrown into there. All those games make sense to go multi-platform. Hi-Fi Rush is a smaller title. It is not a AAA title. It is a very well done title done by a AAA studio, or a studio that's capable of AAA, but it is not a AAA game per se. It is a smaller, more kind of niche project that not the entire studio worked on, while some of the rest of the studio is working on the next things. Probably a Ghostwire Tokyo, and then what else would they be making? Probably an Evil Within 3 or something in those kind of in that kind of vein. Those are kind of the main games. Hi-Fi Rush is kind of like a little pet project, right? You know, same thing over at Obsidian. Pentiment was a Josh Sawyer game. It was a smaller niche game. It had very good production quality. It is not a AAA game, though. You know, if it was made by an independent studio, we'd be calling it an indie game. It has that flavor, but it is not a indie game, because they're definitely not independent, but it has that flavor, that kind of zip to it. That is a good example of it. You know, they're making Avowed, they're making the Outer Worlds 2, they are making Grounded, they're constantly working on that. They probably have a couple other things in the oven as well that they're working on. And Pentiment was just like a little Josh Sawyer project to work on and bridge a gap. And that is something that makes sense to go multi-platform with. It is an experience, and it's an experience that's probably better suited for a handheld format. And then, you know, Sea of Thieves, like, I don't even think we need to broach that. That's a live service game. Makes perfect sense to go multi-platform, because it has kind of reached its saturation level now at where it's going to be with Xbox, right? There's going to be a little bit of growth here and there, but as far as, you know, real growth, they need to expand beyond Xbox for that. It's been at almost 7 years now. You know, I think it's fair to say that can go multi-plat. But where a lot of the discourse this past week has come from is, well, let's just talk about it. Let's get it going there. Jez Corden, sorry, Tom Warren, and Jeff Grubb, all reporting their sources are claiming that multi-plat is happening in some way. Each one of them with their own unique kind of game. You know, Indiana Jones, Starfield, and Gears of War are all part of that rumor mill. And kind of looking at what that means is, you know, obviously they're looking at the possibility of bringing Indiana Jones or Starfield to another system. In this case, it would have to be the PlayStation, because I don't think Nintendo will support those. And then Gears of War as well, namely the new Gears of War that's in development at the Coalition. And that's all part of this whole cycle of rumors. I trust Jez Corden, Tom Warren, and Jeff Grubb's reporting on this. I trust that completely. But here's where the kind of thing that we got to consider is this is them exploring these opportunities. We don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. There is a very good chance that a lot of this was a brain exercise of going, okay, we are going to go multi-plat with some stuff. We need to kind of visit the possibility of how much it's going to cost to develop multi-plat for all of our titles versus just a select few, right? If Bethesda needs to acquire PS5 dev kits for working on a smaller game, is that cost going to be too high to warrant even developing? Like, they got to get the dev kits, they got to staff up a PS5 team, they got to run support on that, and do all those things that Microsoft would normally be handling internally, right? So they gotta have a front-facing system for all those things, and the cost of that is that something they're going to work back out of by releasing multi-platform? How many titles could they expect to ship? Things like that. So, you know, there's a cost exercise that would involve all teams in order to kind of vocalize on that, right? Other than art essentially being already done and vocal work, you know, the actual, I don't want to say the meat and potatoes of a game, but like what we see as the meat and potatoes of the game, that stuff stays the same. But your programming and your back end and all that stuff, your UI experience, all those things are different from one console to another. and they require specific teams to develop for. So there is a lot of cost associated with that. So there could be an exercise involved in figuring this out. Okay, what's going to happen for that? And then they can take that right up to the top and go, this is the cost, this is a potential reward. And they can balance that out. And then there's more cost to it than just money, obviously, right? One of the biggest issues with that is devaluing your own brand for a short-term payoff. When you say, hey, we're Xbox and we're going to ship our games to the PlayStation, why would you buy an Xbox when you could just buy a PlayStation and get those games, right? So there is going to have to be a buffer there, or else they devalue their own hardware. And that buffer is either going to be obviously Game Pass is a part of this. I hear there might be some changes happening to how Game Pass is structured. I'm not 100% sure if I believe what I've heard. I haven't heard from sources that I would trust on that. I have just heard chatter. So I'm not even going to report on that yet, right? Because I don't want to talk about it until it happens. I do believe there will be a change or two to Game Pass, right? I don't really want to speculate on what those will be because they're going to be business related decisions. But what draws us to the hardware is Game Pass. That's a big part of it. Day and date, things like that. So if they were to say, hey, Starfield can come to PlayStation 12 months after release, or whatever it is, their first party game has a 12-month exclusivity window on the Xbox, that is something different, right? I still don't see it working for big tentpole games, and I never see Sony doing it back. So you're still creating a value deficit, and I don't like that. I don't think that is something that they're going to be okay with over on their end. And because, as I say, it devalues their brand, devalues their hardware, which is ultimately a big part of their business. They got to look at that. The other big concern I do have with something like this is it effectively eliminates competition, or at least effective competition, by giving PlayStation the power. As I said, like, why would you ship something, or why would you buy an Xbox when PlayStation will have them both then, right, is a very big issue. And then you have, so now you're stuck on PlayStation, right? And PlayStation's going, well, we're not really even competing with Xbox anymore. They're like a glorified third party, kind of like Sega or what have you, right? And their quality might dip down, or they might get less brave with what they make. And they're already kind of complacent there, right? A lot of their first party games are basically the same thing, or the same concept, the over the shoulder view, the exploration, the way they work. A lot of them are very similar. And I'm afraid that the complacency will get even stronger, and their inability to do anything truly innovative. I'm not saying that what they do isn't innovative. They do some amazing stuff, but it's within a narrower scope. Whereas if they were kind of scared a little bit, I think they would, scared of getting run over by Xbox, by competition, they might open up a little bit. And to talk a little bit about what I mean by that is, if you remember back when the Xbox One and PS4 got announced, PlayStation changed their price in between when the Xbox showcase happened that showed that, and later on the same day when the PlayStation showcase happened that showed their pricing, right? They dropped the price of the PS4 by 100 American dollars to match the price of the Microsoft Xbox, or the Xbox One console. And they made sure things like game sharing was still able to happen, because if you remember Don Madick, and you can go look up that E3 presentation, go right ahead. Don Madick was on stage saying how always online and you can't share your games, and like basically telling us as consumers how we're going to not be spending money with the Xbox brand. And that was his downfall as head of Xbox. And it's obviously, we've seen a shift of how the company is operating, and this seems to be rewinding back to that, and I don't like that. But that goes back into saying how important it is for competition, because without that, PlayStation 4 would have been more money. And I guarantee you that without Xbox in the field, the next generation of hardware will be close to double in price. Games will be $150 Canadian. Like everything will be doubled easily. Right now we're looking at $90 games, and I think we'd be easily looking at $150 games if there was no competition in the AAA premium console experience space. Obviously, we can't discount Nintendo's existence, but the fact is Nintendo has decided they're not playing that game. They're playing a different game altogether, right? So, there's a lot of worry there, right? And then, what about hardware, right? If we're devaluing hardware, where does the box from Xbox really come from, right? What does that mean going forward? What does that look like? What happens to my library? I have video games of mine all the way back to the Xbox, like the original Xbox days, right? I have digital games that I have bought that go all the way back there. I don't even want to fathom how much money I've spent on that over the years. And all that would be gone because Microsoft decides to go multi-plat and breaks their console standing. That's a huge concern, right? So what happens to that library if indeed this is what's happening, right? And it is that way, right? It is one of those things. So as a result of all this discourse, Phil Spencer went on Twitter and said, hey, look, we hear what's happening. We're listening to this. We are in the process of having, we were going to have an event next week. We are going to have that event next week where we will be talking about this. And we're going to address this stuff and talk about it and talk about what our business is looking at like going forward. So now's the waiting period in between him saying this a little bit later in the day yesterday to next week, whenever this happens. Will be, next week we'll find out for sure, I guess, right? I'm hoping the messaging has got to be clear. It's got to be like crystal clear, transparent messaging. There can't be any room for doubt. We need to know exactly what's happening, and we need to know what it looks like for the future. And it's as simple as that, right? Now, my sources, and if you think for a second that I'm supporting them in this decision, I'm not. I do agree in a business sense. There is some logic, I guess would be the best way to phrase it, that makes sense for them to go multi-platform on specific titles. And I think that should be decided on a case-by-case basis. I think that is something that they need to look at individually as they happen and go, this is why we're going to do that, or how we're going to go about doing that, right? And make it make sense. Live service stuff, I find there's a lot less of an argument from me on that because I get it. I have no problem with Call of Duty being available on everything. Whatever. Let me play it at the gas station when I'm pumping gas on the digital screen. I don't care. All right. I have no problem with that because in order to make money, it needs to be as available as possible. It's a live service game. That's how those work, right? Even though that's what we would call a premium live service game because you pay for the game and then you get it. And then you get online and you got microtransactions and battle passes and stuff to buy. That's how it lives. It lives on the battle pass side of it, right? Yeah, they make money off of you spending the $80 or $90, whatever it is on the game. But they really make their money off of the micro transactions and the battle passes. And I think they might actually transition that whole method of thinking down the road. We'll see. If they really stop and take a look at their business models and stuff like that, I think they will see that there's a better way of capturing that money and a better way of doing business with that. But again, we'll see. But as there's less of an argument for me on that, and I don't want to be playing Halo on PS5, right? Okay, I got to buy one less box every 7 years or whatever. That's fine. It doesn't make sense to me, right? I will never be playing a Mario game on my Xbox. I will never be playing a Zelda game on my PS5. I'll never be playing God of War on my Xbox either. So why would I be playing Halo on my PS5? That doesn't make sense to me, right? And yet here they are talking about it. In a sense, Halo Infinite's multiplayer, if they reworked what that looked like or what the mythology was of how they were delivering that, especially because it's free to play, you can play the multiplayer of Halo Infinite without actually buying Halo Infinite. Kind of like how you can play Warzone. I could see that being packaged up somehow, but I would rather see that get packaged up into something different and put multi-platform. As an aside, what I would really rather see that is become a hero shooter, free to play, multi-platform, right? Where you have, the Master Chief, and you can base it all around Halo's gameplay, because Halo's gameplay I think is ultimate when it comes to that. But where you have Master Chief from Halo, and you have Smash Brothers, when you have I am drawing a blank on their names from God of War. Phoenix? The guys from God of War, Dom and Ooh, that's going to bug me now. The guys from God of War or Gears of War, things like that, where you have your characters from your leading games and you have them in a shooter. I think that would be cool, right? And create a shared universe shooter, kind of like how they did with Smash Brothers. You could go multi-plat with that and invite the other companies to participate if they want, and then you could have Joel from The Last of Us pop in, and Aloy, and the Killzone dude, and things like that, right? So you could do something like that and have fun with it, and I think it would be worthwhile exploring that opportunity. But and that's kind of like my pipe dream with it, right? But I don't think just shipping the SKU as it exists now onto that hardware makes any sense. Anyways, kind of back to this multi-platform thing from Xbox. As I said earlier, I don't have any kind of sources telling me specifically what's happening here, right? I've read what Jez and Tom and Grub have posted, or I've watched what they've talked about on their shows. Grub was talking about on Game S Mornings yesterday about the Gears of War stuff and things like that. And it's still, the way it reads to me and comes across to me, is it's still like it's poking, they're prodding, they're trying to figure it out. That being said, I do have sources that are telling me it's not as bad as we think. Just kind of wait and see before what is announced, basically, before judging. And that's kind of what I already said last year when these rumors started circulating about Hi-Fi Rush, and that is like, let's wait and see what happens here, right? And see what it is, because I don't think it's near as bad as what they're saying, for all the reasons I just kind of talked about. Right, chances are very high that the big games like Indy and Starfield and Gears and that is more of a thought experiment than an actual let's do this, right? Maybe it's a timed let's do this. Maybe it's completely not. And as I say, some devs are sitting there wondering, why can't we ship this to PlayStation and capture more money when we see Mojang over here shipping to PlayStation and Nintendo too. So there is some valid reason from there, and that is whether there's kind of an internal strife happening over this or not. I don't know, right? It's the vibe I'm getting. It's kind of the thought on leadership. Jez did a really good article about Microsoft's poor leadership and messaging when it comes to being a company. Nintendo and Sony know they're entertainment companies. Microsoft does not know they're an entertainment company yet. They just haven't figured it out yet. And entertainment companies need to put the consumer first when it comes to how the content is perceived to them. Sony is masters of that. Nintendo are masters of that, right? And they need to learn that lesson. I think Phil understands it. I just don't think he can get it kind of higher up the chain. right? Um, the other thing that we got to think about too is back when the Bethesda acquisition happened, a lot of people were going, "Why isn't Starfield coming to the PS5?" Right? And at that time, Xbox did the math. I've seen the math, okay, and it showed them clear as day, right? This is how much money it's going to cost to develop for the PS5. This is how much money we're going to get. And they went, okay, so that's our profit window. That's how much money we could potentially make. We would rather not make that and bolster Game Pass, right? Which makes sense. Okay, I just got really fuzzy. Let me reset a camera here. Hmm. Let me try auto frame. Weird. Anyways, so anyways, bolstering Game Pass was the concept behind things like Starfield not going forward, not being multi-plat. Um, Game Pass isn't performing the way that I think they were expecting it to. And the problem with Game Pass not performing the way that they were expecting it to is in order for you to get more Game Pass numbers, you need to get more console numbers. And they're just not shipping the consoles that they needed to. Um, how do they fix that? Well, we kind of gotta wait and find out, right? What all this means before we can continue to speculate what their other plans are, right? And why? Because I'm getting a lot of mixed messaging here. Not only am I seeing from people that I trust and respect, like Jez and Grubb and Tom Warren, about about these games getting looked at for going multi-plat. Excuse me. But I'm also seeing and hearing things from people on the inside saying, "Hey, hold your horses. Don't blow it up yet. Don't sell the thing. Right? It's fine. Don't worry. Don't call us dead." And I'm kind of going, okay, so what does that look like? And as I say, you're trying to we're weighing basically devaluing the brand against not, and that's why I think it doesn't make sense. Um, and the other part of why that doesn't make sense is and to devalue the brand in such a real phenomenal and irreversible way is you've got new hardware in the pipeline, so why don't you see how that works, right? And I'm not saying that a new console is going to fix it, because other than the Xbox 360, which was a very unique thing, um, and there was a unique situation around its success, the rest of it since then has not been great, right? Um, I don't think the Xbox 360 was a success because of leadership at Microsoft. In fact, I would hazard to say it was a success despite the leadership at Microsoft. What made the 360 so great was all the developers wanting to develop for it. And why did they all want to develop for it? Because it was easier. It was a computer, right? Developing for a computer. Same reason as the OG Xbox was, right? It was a computer. And PlayStation went from the PS2, which was the Emotion engine, to the PS3, which was the Cell Broadband engine. And so the Xbox 360 slash PS3 generation was a thing that was hard to develop for and hard to optimize for in the Cell Broadband engine, versus something that was easy to do that for because it was basically a little tiny PC. Um, and it made sense. And then Sony got on top of this. When was that? PS4. It came out. It was an AMD computer, right? Easy, simple architecture, program for it. And the Xbox One was almost exactly the same thing, right? It was still AMD, but structural wise and power wise and capability wise, same thing. And here we are with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and they are virtually the same thing again. Um, and they're not winning that fight. right? They were winning the fight when they were the better option to develop for. And they were winning that fight when, yeah, they had marketing and they had things like that backing them up. They were making good decisions, but I don't think that was the whole picture. I think the biggest part of that picture was the PS3 just fell and devastated things. And that's not to say the PS3 was bad. I think the PS3 was amazing, and I think the Cell Broadband engine was a technological marvel. I just would not want to be figuring out how to optimize for that, right? And here we are now with conventional chipsets, and we're getting incredible power, right? We're getting incredible output out of them and optimizations out of them, and that's what that's for, right? So it was just Sony was willing to bet everything on a Cell Broadband engine and Blu-ray, and Microsoft was backing the Toshiba HD DVD platform, or format rather, and a conventional AMD architecture platform, and they were right on one and wrong on the other, and on both sides, right? Blu-ray was definitely the format over HD DVD, and Cell Broadband, aside from having some very specific applications outside of gaming, didn't catch on. And here we are, and that was Intel. That was Intel pushing that on Sony, to be honest. And where we are now, totally different world. Doesn't mean Intel's out of it, but it's totally different than AMD. Totally different world with AMD running what we have now. Anyways, so talking about hardware, we know so much about the PS5 Pro. I've talked about its form factor, its chipset, its power specs, everything over the course of time. We know so much about it other than basically the day it comes out and what the price tag is going to be, and even then we have some good guesses. However, there's no new SKU rumors for Xbox for this generation, right? Like real SKU rumors. We have replacements, right? We have Elwood and Project Elwood and Project Brooklyn slated for the Series S and Series X refreshes, which is the Series S, which is Elwood, is basically the same form, the same white box, might be black, who knows, little more optimization on the chipset, more memory, blah 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 blah. But other than that, it is the same power output and everything. As far as you and I are concerned, there's real no difference. It's the same price even, and it'll be probably soft launched into the network. There is a different radio on it for Bluetooth, and there's a different things like that. But again, not a real big issue. The Series X goes from being a square thing to being a log. It's going to be round. No disk drive, all digital, and it has the exact same chipset and everything in it, other than it's built on a different process. Why? Because it's more efficient. And I don't mean efficient and it's going to save you energy. It will. I don't think I would be, spending my fortunes on my hydro savings on a trip to Cancun or anything. You might be able to buy a can of pop or something after the end of the year. But you will... Where the efficiency comes from is heat, right? It's going to produce a lot less heat, so a lot less cooling, so things like that. And it's on their side. More chips because they're smaller, so they get more chips on a wafer and better production, right? Exact same thing happening with the PS5, right? We already have the PS5 refresh out in the wild. Nobody even noticed it. And the PS5 Pro is reportedly coming, and it's going to utilize the same refresh with more power. Cool. Why aren't we getting a Series X Max or something? They're horrible at naming things, so it'll probably be an Xbox Series X or Series X1. Yeah, they'll just confuse people with it. But anyways, why aren't we getting one? Well, because Xbox has hardware planned for earlier than the PlayStation 6 will be coming. And this includes a high power console, just kind of like the Series X is serving that function, and a lower price dockable portable for as soon as 2026, 2 years before we expect a new generation to be coming out. So we kind of expect the new generation to be coming out holiday 27, probably 28, right? Realistically. This is kind of moving that goalpost. And this does a couple things for Microsoft. A, it allows them to move into that generation kind of a little bit on their own accord and kind of commanding the space for that gap in between them and the PlayStation 6. They need to compete with the Steam Deck in some tangible way. And I mean that in the sense of the Steam Deck isn't robbing Xbox of really anything. People buy one and they put Game Pass on it and they play their games, right? So it's not really robbing them of anything in that sense, but it's time and it's libraries. You're going to buy a game on your Steam Deck. You're probably going to buy it for Steam and not through the Xbox store. And I think they would rather just not do that. I think they would rather have you buy it through Xbox. So look at something like that coming. And this kind of fits into a bunch of stuff that I've heard about AMD recently. AMD's a little leaky, so we'll talk about this in a bit more detail through the stories coming up. And that dockable portable, that is something very attractive especially as kind of the lower tier part of this process, right? You have a dockable portable. You have the ability to play on your TV, bring it with you, and when I said lower price, I didn't mean like, I should have said kind of lower tiered. I think it'd be fitting the role that the Series S is playing right now, but it'll also be portable, so it might not actually be lower price. It might be the same price, but it just does a little bit less as far as resolution goes. But it is also portable, so who cares, right? When you're holding it in your hand, you don't need that 4K 60 frames, right? You want the frames, you don't necessarily need the K, right? So, a little bit different there. AMD has not been confirmed. Unlike AMD has a contract with Sony, right? So the next PlayStation will likely have, unless Sony breaks that contract, AMD architecture. AMD does not have an agreement with Microsoft. AMD has just been the supplier of choice since the original Xbox days. It's just kind of been the way it is. They are fighting for it, right? They are working on being Microsoft's supplier. They always are. But Intel and even NVIDIA are supposedly in the running with this. And that is very interesting to see. NVIDIA's got some really interesting system on a chip tech in their pipeline. And there is potential there. I don't see it necessarily happening, at least for the standalone console. It could happen for the dockable, but then you kind of want the dockable and the standalone console to be very compatible and very similar experiences. So, right? So you kind of want them to have the same architecture. Be interesting. Intel, on the other hand, does have some really good laptop stuff in the pipe, and they have some really good PC stuff that could easily be adapted in a way and developed a little bit for a console. So we will see how this all shakes out. Rumors are that the new platform will also involve cloud gaming as a key component, utilizing Microsoft's kind of weight in the industry, I guess, to power some of its features. I don't see it being Microsoft using cloud to actually like deliver the game in that sense. I'm more so meaning their Azure technology that is behind Flight Simulator, right? That allows them to stream in data from their server to your console, so it populates like the map and stuff like that, right? So more how Kojima's making that Overdose game versus kind of how this is working with cloud gaming. There's two different kind of aspects of it, right? So cloud computing over cloud gaming. I used the wrong phrase there, and I think it needs to be clarified there. Anyways, quick sip of coffee, and before it gets cold on me. And then into the PlayStation State of Play. That PlayStation State of Play that happened last week, January 31st. Yeah, January 31st. So just kind of bullet point some stuff here. Death Stranding 2 got its first kind of real full trailer. We had that Norman Reedus trailer there last year where you just kind of stood there and looked out. We got this first full trailer, got a good look at the game and kind of a lot of the stuff happening in it. And it got a name now. And if you've been following along, members of my audience will definitely know what the title is because I've been talking about it for a while. Death Stranding 2 on the beach. I definitely said it out loud last week before the show. So we're there now. It's out there on the beach. It is a bad name. It's a bad name, but it's a Kojima game, so it's okay. It gets passed, right? And more Kojima. We have a new IP coming from Kojima for the PlayStation in the action stealth espionage genre, and it's not Metal Gear, but will break barriers. And this is from his quote: "Will break barriers between games and film." This is probably going to be a PS6 thing because he said once he's done with his current projects, this is his next thing. Well, his current projects are Death Stranding 2 and Overdose, and then this thing. And I did hear that there's going to be an announcement there. I did not expect it to be this, to be honest, but I didn't know what I expected it to be. But a stealth action espionage game is kind of what everybody's been wanting Kojima to do. It's either that or they want him to do Silent Hill. Right, so here we are. Excited for what that means and what that could look like in many years from now. Like, yeah, this is going to be like 28, 29, maybe even 2030 before that happens. Rise of the Ronin got a kind of a deep dive. It's looking really good. It comes March 22nd. It looks fun. It looks like there's a lot of different things to do. It's very crisp and very, very good looking. Until Dawn remaster got announced. And again, that's also looking really good. That's coming from Ballistic Moon. We don't have a date on it, but it's coming. And I know there's a lot of fans out there that were excited when I kind of teased that Until Dawn was coming or going to be at the show. So there we are. It's finally there. And Stellar Blade. For those that don't remember, this is the game that will redefine boob jiggle physics. It got a deep dive trailer and a release date of April 26th. It looks phenomenal. It doesn't quite strike me as something I will play, but it looks really good, and the story's got such an interesting premise, except for the whole concept of it. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, but like everything about it, other than the exact reasons why she's there, makes sense. No, we'll have to see how that one does. Your hack and slash kind of game with a Korean supermodel hero that has to wear like really weird outfits to show off her butt and cleavage all the time, and yet she's supposed to be like a badass warrior military taking down these enemies. It's kind of an interesting tactic. Anyways, Capcom showed off Dragon's Dogma 2 again. It's looking absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited for this one. March 22nd. Finally, it'll be coming. I did talk about this one too, potentially coming there. Sonic Generations remaster. Well, this one is Sonic X Shadows Generations. It's a remaster of the Sonic Generations game from 2011 with new shadow content. It's coming this fall. It looks shiny. It looks like another Sonic game, so let's see how that is. Silent Hill: The Short Message is a free-to-play spin-off of Silent Hill. It dropped on the PlayStation 5 during the show or just shortly after the show. And we got a new trailer for Silent Hill 2 Remake. That came from Bloober. No release date on it. Gunplay looked a little weird in it. Like, it didn't look technically weird. Like, it looked fine. It just felt out of place. Like, it just seemed a little too actiony, but we'll see. And then what was next? Judas, which is it's from Ken Levine of BioShock fame. It got a story trailer. It's like a colorful dystopian thing. It looks like a game made by Ken Levine, and you know, if that excites you, that's good, because BioShock was just, kind of one of those phenomenal things. BioShock 1 specifically I thought was amazing, and I've been waiting for something out of him for quite a while. And Judas is coming. We just don't know the release date of it. Couple of rapid fire ones here. V Rising and Dave the Diver are coming to PlayStation 2024. Zenless Zone Zero from Hoyoverse, it's in development for the PS5. Metro Awakening VR, which is set before Metro 2033. It drops on PSVR 2 at some point. And Legendary Tales, which is another PSVR 2 title, was announced. It's got fantasy, magic, swords, bows. Kind of looks like it takes place in the non-licensed fantasy universe that is very bordering existing fantasy universes. And then we got, more deeper looks into Helldivers 2 and Foam Stars, both of which are dropping or will be out. Like, they both come out this week, right? So lots of looks into stuff there. A couple of announcements that were interesting, some good trailers. It was a relatively good show, but it was very light on PlayStation first party. And by very light, I mean none of these games that I talked about are PlayStation first party. They are all third party with an agreement from a PlayStation first party. Yes, let's just beep. Apologies there. I got both these, and neither one of them are the ones that beeps. One of some other thing. To make sure everything else was silent. None of these are PlayStation first party. We've got none of, like, they're all third party with, maybe a publishing agreement or a like in the case of Helldivers and Rise of the Ronin and Death Stranding for that matter. Sony owns the IP, but they don't own the studio, right? We didn't see anything from Naughty Dog. We didn't see anything from Guerrilla. We didn't see anything. We didn't even see a snippet of San Diego Studios, right? MLB The Show, which is like it's coming, right? Didn't see any of that. We didn't see anything from Santa Monica, though I don't expect there to be. We didn't see anything from any of their first party studios. And that's leading me to believe that there isn't probably going to be anything coming from their first party studios for quite some time. There's a possibility, I guess, that there's something coming from first party studios in the last half of the year, and they will announce it in the summer. And they're just waiting to get a narrower window, but nothing's even been announced from any of these studios to talk about. So it's kind of interesting that they wouldn't even just be like, hey, let's do a hype trailer, generate some interest, and then we'll do a release date trailer in the summer when we are ready. So kind of interesting there. Yeah. And thinking of first party studios, we got a Gran Turismo VR port, and we got the Horizon Call of the Mountain VR game, and that is it for PSVR 2. Otherwise, everything has been third party, which is kind of weird. Anyways, moving on. Let's get away from the weird stuff. Nintendo Switch 2 rumors. I might as well just leave this on my script every week because it's always here. This time it's related to the screen. The rumor is it's 8-inch, which is bigger than what we have now. Sorry, my cord got wrapped around my chair and I couldn't move. It's an 8-inch, but it's an LCD. It seems like a step backward from the 7-inch OLED that we have now. Um, who knows, right? This is coming from a supply chain analyst who observes the market. He's not like predicting things necessarily. He's saying there's a lot of these 8-inch LCD screens being moved right now, and he thinks, pretty sure they're going to Nintendo. Right? That's basically it. That's what he's saying. So that's his job, is he observes the market and talks about that kind of stuff. It matches. Video Game Chronicles did reporting on this previously, and it does match that they said it was going to be an 8-inch LCD, and I was kind of like, is that a typo? Did we forget to type LED or OLED or QLED or something? And then I was just like, well, it is Nintendo. Who knows, right? And that is my comment here. It is Nintendo. Who knows, right? Like, you know, they could be like, oh, introducing the new Nintendo baked potato, and that's what we get to play games on next year. You never know with them. Still with Nintendo, Nintendo's president, Shintaro Furukawa, apologies, said during an earnings call earlier this morning, actually, that the Switch will continue to be its main business into 2024. And a lot of the video gaming sphere went, well, no Switch this year, I guess, or Switch 2 this year. It's worth noting that Nintendo, this was their earnings call, their Q3 earnings call. They still have one more quarter to complete in their fiscal year, which will be Q4. After that, on their paperwork, it'll be 2025. It'll be fiscal year 2025. So as they're talking about moving into 2024, they're meaning the balance of the fiscal year, not the balance of the actual calendar year, right? So on their documents, after the next quarter's done, it'll be 2025, and that's good enough for them, right? So take that how you will, right? But I'm just saying that's how that works, right? And he was on an earnings call with investors, with their shareholders, right? So he's talking about their fiscal calendar. He's not referring to the calendar, right? Anyways, as I say, take that how you will. Metroid Prime 4, again, talking about that again this week. It's rumored to be cross-gen and a launch title for Switch 2, similar to Twilight Princess was for GameCube and Wii, and Breath of the Wild was for the Wii U and Switch, which is congruent to rumors that I talked about as recently as last week, but much earlier as well. Rumors that I've heard kind of surrounding the reboot of the development of the game that took place around 5 years ago, which I've said before was to optimize the engine and build to handle different hardware. And when I heard different hardware the first time, I was like, different hardware, not as in multiple, but as in a completely separately styled hardware, which makes sense. But in this context, I'm kind of looking at it as different, meaning multiple hardware. And that makes even more sense when you think of it. If it's going to be a launch title, they will want it to be compat with the existing Switch platform. They will want it to be compat with the new stuff, right? And it makes sense they would be like, okay, we got to reboot this thing because we need to create all new assets because we're going to be, 4K or whatever it is, right? We need to rebuild this thing from the ground up so it can handle all this stuff. And that kind of that lines up with everything, right? We've already been talking about. And then kind of when could they announce it, right? When do they announce the Switch 2? Well, I said last week, expect a direct in February. That hasn't changed, right? Expect a direct in the next couple weeks. I think maybe if you are, how do I say this without saying the actual date? I would say slightly more than halfway through the month would be a good guess. And I think that maybe there's a specific date that might be happening on. But, audio listeners might be at a loss there, right? Because they might not get my big hint. but I don't want to put that in for the translator, or sorry, the YouTube prompter thing, because they keyword that, and I don't want to have that there. So anyways, expect a direct in the next couple of weeks. You know, I would say anywhere in between what's that? That'd be 4, maybe 10 days, maybe 9, maybe 11. Could be 10 days or more. We will see. Your guess is as good as mine whether it'll be there or not. I haven't heard either way. I have asked, and I have been told a shrugging of the shoulders is basically I got the emoji that went, so okay. I got the shrugging shoulders, hands in the air, went, I don't know, emoji. And it's like, okay, thanks. Right? But, you know, to kind of recap that, there are some things that I do expect to be there. I am pretty positive. I have multiple sources telling me about that, and I did talk about it last week, or last episode, but I will kind of recap them quickly. Fire Emblem 4 Remake, a Donkey Kong Country game for the 30th anniversary, Metroid Prime 2 Remaster, maybe 3. There was a kind of a question mark there beside that, and it kind of got left. So I was like, okay. Zelda Oracle games getting remakes from Grezzo, who did the I just about said Twilight Princess again. A Link's Awakening. I kept on going to Oracle titles because my brain's on Zelda Oracle. They did the Link's Awakening remake for Switch that came out a couple years back that was phenomenal. Famicom Detective Club returning as a Nintendo Detective Club. Bunch of high school girls solving crime. And then there's a couple more that I haven't really nailed down fully, but I'm pretty sure one of them is a localization of a Japanese game from Goodfeel. And I'm pretty sure it has to do with drum beating. But again, I'm not 100% sure on that one. I haven't fully nailed that one down, but you know, it is what it is. But Nintendo's still not talking about a whole lot, and even on these leaks, that's not a whole lot beyond this quarter, let alone the rest of the year. So do they announce the Switch 2 now, or do they go, okay, no, we're going to soft go in through the next quarter, right? You know, and Q3's done, right? They're into Q4 now. They need to do a direct to kind of go, here's what to expect out of us for the next quarter. And then we'll see, right? So I know they have stuff in the bank, right? And as far as the things on here, I know Fire Emblem 4 Remake, I know it's done, right? Metroid Prime 2 Remaster, it should be done. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it should be done. And then we also have Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD that just needed to be dropped into the Switch overlay to get rid of like the Wii U bullshit. And because they were already remastered for Wii U, right? So, and I know that's done. In fact, we were pretty sure it was going to get announced not last year, the year before, right? And they've been sitting on it. Why have they been sitting on it? Well, Nintendo does this, and they will sit on games for a couple of years that are done because they find a hole in their schedule and they go, uh-oh, and they throw something in. Either whether that uh-oh is because they had something that was going to be there and then it moved, it got shuffled out for whatever reason, or planning, you know, things just aren't ready, so then they throw something out. And in both cases, Fire Emblem 4 and the Wind Waker Twilight Princess, I believe both fit into that category. So, but if there's not a whole lot coming, maybe it is time to announce it, right? And Nintendo marches to the beat of their own drum. I've said this 1,000 times, probably 1,000 times in this episode, for crying out loud. They do what Nintendo wants to do. They don't really listen to anybody or follow a curve, right? There's kind of a little logic and a predictability to what they do, but other than that, and by that I mean they're probably going to announce something at this show. They haven't even announced the show yet. They're probably going to announce the show, you know, and by announce, I mean they're going to send out a tweet that says, join us this Wednesday or Friday or whatever for a Nintendo Direct that will focus on games mostly coming out in the first half of 2024. Blah 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 blah. Right? It'll almost exactly read like that, and then you get to watch it. Right? So we'll see. Anyways, moving on from there, new PlayStation handheld. Is it time for the Vita 2? Are we ready? Right? Do we even deserve a Vita 2? And you're probably saying, hey, Warren, that PlayStation Portal launched last year. That was a handheld from PlayStation. What about that? That's probably what you're thinking of. No, not that one. Another one. And by that, I mean one that can play games natively, which is probably a pretty important part of a handheld, right? That PlayStation Portal is essentially a second screen. And it's advantageous in certain environments, sure, but I don't like it's sold a lot better than I thought it would, right? That being said, so did the PSVR 2. And I think that's just a sheer amount of people that have to buy stuff that say PlayStation on it. Anyways, rumors are circulating. This is via Moore's Law is Dead, who has sources about this, saying that there is a new handheld from PlayStation in development that will be able to natively support gameplay on both the PS4 and PS5 games. AMD has the contract with PlayStation, as I've talked about already, and they're handling hardware for things like the Steam Deck as well. So they kind of already have, I don't want to say the tech in the book, because it's got to be a little bit better than what Steam Deck, even Steam Deck 2 is going to be able to output. But, and I say better, it needs to be optimized in a different way in order to be able to handle the PS4 and PS5 stuff, at least on a native format that isn't going to kill a battery in like 2.5 seconds. So, but they do have that tech. They do have that things, the knowledge there. So they should be able to handle the demanding requirements a chip for that product will take, and the architecture for that product would need. It is said that this device will be able to play natively PS4 and PS5 games via a patch. So the PS5 games will need to be patched in order to work with this. Probably some sort of resolution patch or a frame rate patch. But it's a couple years out and it hasn't been even greenlit yet. I don't know what entirely that means, but we will see that. Right, this isn't my information. Again, this is coming from Moore's Law is Dead. But I wanted to talk about it because it's kind of related to that Xbox handheld dockable portable unit that we were talking about. This all fits into that whole thing, right? With AMD kind of behind it. So it's interesting. We've got 3 companies in the business, directly in the business. And we've got 3 companies in this business that are talking about, or that have rumors swirling galore, really, about new hardware. So it is interesting to see that happen at this stage of the life cycle. And the fact that almost all of them, there's also an Xbox handheld rumor floating around. Jez Corden talked about quite a lot of it. And I think a lot of that ties into what I've heard about this dockable portable and kind of where they have been researching in the past. So I think I'm not 100% sure if, I don't want to say things are getting blurred and connected there. I've heard those in the past as 2 different things. And now we're seeing them kind of merge. And maybe that is what the intent was. I don't know. But I didn't really talk about it being a separate thing because I think it's transitioned to this new thing. Either way. New hardware, 3 years? Well, I guess it's technically 4 years into the generation, 3 and a bit years into the generation. And it's interesting to see this. And, you think it'd be easy enough for them to just go PlayStation Vita 2, we just do that again. But what I think they're trying to get away from is having bespoke mobile titles, because Nintendo isn't doing that anymore. Nintendo doesn't have a bespoke mobile title because everything comes on the Switch. And if you want to carry the Switch with you on the bus, you do that. If you want to hook it up to your 65-inch TV, you do that. And the world's kind of changed from that. So you can't just do like a Vita 2 and hammer it out. You can't even, that's just not going to work. So they need to be smarter with that. And this is happening way more often than I thought it would. I'm kind of becoming a Call of Duty information show, but I'm getting a lot of info on this stuff. So anyways, and I want to keep on talking about it because I think it's interesting. Season 2 of Modern Warfare 3 starts tomorrow, actually. But outside of that, we have fresh details of what is happening behind the scenes at Activision in the Call of Duty development. And kind of talking about Season 2, remember before Season 1 launched, I said that Season 1 Reloaded will have the boys content, and here we are. That's ending right now. Pretty cool, eh? New operator, though it wasn't Soldier Boy. I really wanted Soldier Boy, but we got Firecracker or whatever. Oh, new character. I don't know. I only have like the first couple of issues of the boys. I don't have the full series, so there we are. I was just looking on the bookshelf to see where it was, but I think it's too far out of my reach. Yeah. Anyways, back to Call of Duty. Call of Duty 2024, as I've talked about before, is Call of Duty Black Ops Gulf War. It's being developed. I said it was a Treyarch game. It is a Treyarch game in essence, but Raven Software is developing the core of the game, with Treyarch overseeing handling the multiplayer stuff of it. Raven's handling the campaign and like the UI and that kind of stuff. Raven most recently led development of Call of Duty Cold War with Treyarch, so very similar arrangement, as well as they do all the work on Warzone. Like Warzone 2 was basically Raven. What is interesting about this is also Gulf War will be the launch pad for open world campaigns. Basically, they're opening up their campaigns so they're not like the linear format of Mission 1, Mission 2, Mission 3 like we've had in the past. But if you played Modern Warfare 3's campaign, you'll know what I mean by open world. There's some missions in that where you have a bit of choice and a bit of freedom into what you do. It wasn't executed very well in that game, but I blame that on it not being in the oven long enough. Like they didn't have enough time to make that work, and here we are, right? I think with this, it's different, right? We're gonna see Gulf War. It should be cooked, fully. Should be ready. It's not going to come out medium rare or anything like that. And we're going to see these open world campaigns, I think, with quite a bit of polish put on them. And apparently, it's going to play kind of similar to Far Cry or Halo Infinite has, where you kind of can attack things in your own unique way. If you want to go in guns blazing or you want to go in silent and things like that, I think there will be some parts of it that will be, I don't want to say forced, but you will be goaded into playing it a certain way. And then there'll be other ones where it'll just be like, whatever's fun for you, boss, right? And I think that's fun, right? And especially being a Black Ops title, there is potential in there for that to be a very unique kind of experience. And reportedly future titles that are in development will be utilizing this method, namely Black Ops 5, which is Call of Duty 2025, and a little bit about that in a sec, and then other titles down the road. But Black Ops 5, as I said, it's being led by Treyarch. That's still the case. As previously reported, Infinity Ward is handling Call of Duty 2026, which is a new Modern Warfare entry, and Sledgehammer has been given the green light, which I talked about last week. They've been given the green light on Call of Duty 2027. It's worth noting that Sledgehammer was being pushed to handle the campaign of 2025 with Treyarch, and kind of similar to how Raven is. But they pushed back on that. And the reason why they push back on that is they've never really been given the opportunity to properly develop their own title. Like they've released their own games as far as the credit's been concerned, but they haven't really been given the time to actually do that properly yet. They've been constantly rushed onto a project that needs to be out in a year and a half, and leadership ultimately agreed with them and said, hey, you know what, good call. You guys do the 2027 title, and it's Treyarch that wanted to do these back-to-back Black Ops titles, let them figure it out. And that's not to say they're left high and dry. Obviously, all studios come on board to actually assist with the development of it. It's just who's leading it and who's doing the grunt work is kind of a big part of it. Next on our discussion list is Final Fantasy 14. The beta is coming to Xbox on February 21st. It will require a subscription. At this point, it will require a subscription to Xbox Game Pass Core at the bare minimum to play, which is what Xbox Live was. Which is unique about that is because it's not the case on PlayStation, where players don't need PlayStation Plus to play, because Final Fantasy 14 requires its own subscription. Like, you get up to like the second expansion, I guess, free of charge, but after that, you have to pay for the subscription. So you get to play like 60 or 70 hours apparently of content without paying for your sub, which is, I think that's pretty good. But on the PlayStation, you just need to pay for the sub. You don't need to pay for PlayStation Plus. On Xbox, you got to pay for Xbox Game Pass Core for online access, like you would to play any premium multiplayer game. Free to play on Xbox is free for online. So if you have like a Fortnite or any of the free to play games, you can play them without having Xbox Live or Game Pass Core or whatever you want to call it. But in this case, you've got to buy the game. You got to pay your Xbox Live or Xbox Game Pass Core subscription at the minimum. You could, if you have Ultimate, you're also in on that, right? And then you have to buy the monthly sub for the game, right? Xbox definitely needs to fix that issue. They need to match PlayStation at the bare minimum on that. And they need to do that before that beta comes out. If they're serious about Japan, as I said, they were showing indications that they're serious about Japan. If they're serious about Japan and serious about attracting not only Japanese game fans, but fans of Japanese games, this is important to the platform, and they need to just get rid of that. I would like them to get rid of, I look at like Game Pass Core and PlayStation Plus, like the entry-level online service fee. I look at that as just another rake to pull money in anyways. And if they can forgive it for one game, they can forgive it for another. And in this case, I think they can forgive it for Final Fantasy 14. I think they have to forgive it for Final Fantasy 14 in order for that to get any legs on the platform. So we'll see. Anyways, there was a lot to talk about this week with news. There was a lot of rumors and things like that happening. However, I've had a kind of a busy week since the last episode with a lot of things. I've been given the clearance now to go back to work with my cancer being recovered, or I don't want to say recovered. My cancer's in remission. And I have the ability to work and do things again, although I got to still get my strength up and stuff like that. But my first day back is tomorrow. So I haven't really been playing. I've been playing, but I've been playing like comfort food. I've been playing Call of Duty and Wolfenstein primarily. A little bit of Kerbal Space Program, but most of those two. And unfortunately, that just kind of did it. I don't have any new games to review as of yet. I am going to start playing Pal World because I got to figure out what the heck that is in my head. So maybe next episode I'll have a bit more to say about that. But I don't have any reviews or any kind of what have I been playing and my thoughts this week. So because it's been a heavy news week, and I talked for like an hour and 14 minutes basically about that, I think it's fair enough just to wrap this up and call it that for another week, and we will come back next week with some more content about what I've been playing and things like that. So as I said, that does it for this week. You can find more from us on Twitter by following at Amarren Studios, AMARREN STUDIOS, or on YouTube. Our link is in the audio description of the show. If you do watch us on YouTube and want to bring us with you, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you find your pods. That link is in the description of the show as well. Other than that, I've been Warren. You've been the best audience I could ever ask for. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time. Goodbye. Our opening theme is by Captive Portal, found on the Free Music Archive. The link is in the description at freemusicarchive.org. Thank you to Jason Shaw from audionautics.com for the use of our outro music. Free production music by Jason Shaw at audionautics.com. AUDIONAUTIX.com. The Amarren Studios name and logo, as well as the Well Played name and logo, are all trademarks of Amarren Studios. All video game and other media content is the trademarks of the respective owners. This podcast is produced by Warren Curtis with support from Amanda Curtis. You can find more from Well Played on Twitter at Amarren Studios. That is AMARRENSTUDIOS. Visit w.gg and use code WELLPLAYED, all one word, WELLPLAYED, for 10% off of your order. Thank you for joining us, and have an excellent time.